All right, hello, all you headbangers out there. My name is Alan, and it's that time. Let's talk metal. Sorry, I thought I'd go for something more dramatic this time. Tonight, have a fun topic, but it's going to be a doozy. Going to be talking about one of my favorite albums of all time, and we're going to go deep down the rabbit hole in terms of different versions of this record that are pressed up. We're going so deep, in fact, I brought a flashlight with me. Right there. I literally did. The album in question for tonight is none other than the indomitable Ample Destruction by JAG Panzer. This is, again, I don't know exactly my top favorite albums of all time in a ranked order. This isn't number one, but it could probably be in the top 5 or top 10. Most people are familiar with this album. It is one of the true classics of the genre from the 1980s. Jag Panzer had, sort of a short-lived career early on. The band got, an EP out, got this album out, and did some more recordings, but nothing came to light until the band, was resurrected in the 90s, and have had a good steady career since then. Good for them. But yeah, this is the album. For me, this is the album that all U.S. heavy metal albums from the 1980s are measured by. That if you want to be the best, or even close to the best, you better be able to hang with Ample Destruction. Everything about this album is just delicious. Wait, did I call it delicious? Let's back that up. Everything about this album is a pure metal attack. Yeah, forget that delicious part. Don't know where that came from. Weird. But yeah, you've got the iconic cover art. One of the best pieces of cover art around. You may be able to see there in the background. There's a copy of it on my wall. I'm pointing at it right over there. You've got, the great vocals from Harry the Tyrant Conklin. You've got, some awesome guitar work from a young Joey Tafola. Every song on here is just a classic. You've got License to Kill, Warfare, Symphony of Terror, on and on and on. Harder Than Steel, just crushing stuff. The Watching has this great military anthemic march to it, very defiant. Cardiac Arrest, you've got the big sort of epic closer in the crucifix. The album is stacked top to bottom. They don't come much better than Ample Destruction. If you're not familiar with it, you need to check it out. It is pure, unadulterated, traditional heavy metal. One thing I always liked about it is that it avoids a lot of the sort of, stereotyped tropes from heavy metal at that time. There's no, castles and dragons and swords and all that stuff on here. The album still has a lot of those same, raise your fist and defiant, kind of attitude, but it's from a much more sort of, street level, swinging chains and baseball bats, not enchanted swords and knights in armor. Nah, this is beating you down in a back alley somewhere in an urban environment. It just has a killer sound to it, start to finish, like everything about the album. And there's a lot of versions of this album to like. This album was put out in 1984 on the Ironworks label, which was also related to Azure Records. Heavy metal fans and collectors of that era are familiar with this label because their catalog is one of the most difficult things in the world to unravel. One of the main guys behind the label was Dave Richards, and Dave tended to put out a ton of different variants of things. He did a lot of, in particular, like shaped picture discs, and not just one version, but there'd be umpteen versions. And a lot of these weren't cataloged with a lot of precision. So there are numbers in the Ironworks catalog that don't seem to have been assigned to anything. Things have weird numbering sequences, and it's a real mess, even for dedicated hardcore fans to untangle. If you really want to try to look through the discography, the best place to check is the Colosseum website that I've talked about on other videos. In their labels section, they take a good stab at listing out as much as they possibly can about the Ironworks catalog. But yeah, that one's a true Gordian knot to have to deal with. And ample destruction is no different from a lot of the things in that catalog, in that there's a lot of different versions that you can come across out in the wild. Now, to start out with, do you want to say this album has been reissued a few times in recent years. So if you don't want, a 40-year-old copy of it, you can get them. They've been reissued recently by like High Roller, and there's several different versions of that. They did some colored vinyl versions. There's a version that comes like in a fancy box with extras and all that. Those are cool versions. That's what you want, or that's what you have. That's absolutely cool. I have not picked any of those up, so I don't have physical copies of any of those reissues. The ones I show you tonight will be original issues. I think by the end of the video, you'll kind of understand why I didn't think it was necessary to spend money buying any of the reissued versions, even though they look very nice. All right, so let's start down the hole. First one that I'll show you, if I can get it here, is this really cool picture disc version with that Skyriders artwork zoomed in. Looks fabulous this way. On the back, you have a picture of the band, and this just came with this little yellow insert, little info about the band, and notes that it's numbered copy. This is number 107. There were 175 of these made. Now, this is not an original from Ironworks. This is a bootleg. These were made up sometime, like I think probably the early to mid 2000s. I suspected it was Greek, but I've heard other folks say that it may have been pressed up somewhere in Europe. A couple of folks have said South America, but I don't know about that. But regardless, it's not a legit item. Still, really beautiful copy, a nice item. It doesn't show up very often on Discogs or eBay, so I think the print run on it was pretty small. But this one, if you come across it, nice track, but it is a boot. All right, the album did get licensed in some other territories, so let's go ahead and get those out of the way as well. This version is the pressing on Banzai Records. So this was the Canadian pressing where it got a different cover, which has robots playing chess and squirting each other with ketchup. Is that kinky in Robot Land? I don't know. Not exactly iconic in the sense that the Skyriders art from the other pressings is, but it is the Banzai pressing. Doesn't show up as much. Those Banzai pressings have gotten very collectible over time. This one, the track list is a little bit different as well. So you end up with Black Sunday is on here and a track labeled as instrumental. So this was released back in the day. It's not a recent reissue. So you can get a Banzai press if you're into the Canadian pressings. It was also pressed in Europe on a label called Metalcore, which I think was French technically. And those versions have this cover art, this very distinctive kind of pink background, and then the warrior sitting on top of the stack of bodies of his slain enemies and all that. Which again is a little ironic since that's not the kind of lyrical stuff they really went for, but this kind of fantasy trope has always been very popular among heavy metal fans in Europe in particular, so it's understandable they went with it. Back cover on that one, and picture, kind of a white and red and black motif to it. So this version shows up on eBay pretty regularly too. The Banzai one is the rarer of those foreign presses by far. So, all right, those are out of the way. Let's get back to sort of the standard issue. So this is what Ironworks put out in 1984. It came with a lyric insert. So you've got band picture and some song stuff on one side. And you've got lots more song lyrics on the other side. Of course, some copies over time have lost the insert. Some have them. The labels, it's a silver label, and this particular copy has black print on it, which you can see pretty easy there. Other copies will have red print instead of the black print. I do not know if that signifies anything particularly different. My guess is that the red print is the first pressing, and the black print was put on labels for all subsequent pressings. And I'm saying that because the red printing ones seem to be, in my limited experience looking for copies of this over the past few decades, copies with the red font seem to be rarer. They don't seem to turn up as much. There's another weird variation that comes up that I don't have a good explanation for on the covers. And it's on the back of the cover. So notice the way the titles are printed here. I'm trying to get it close enough without making it blurry. That the song titles, I refer to this as got kind of a typewriter font to it. They're a little hard to read. It's a little light. It doesn't stand out very well. Kind of looks like some kind of typewriter font to it. Okay, yeah, sure, whatever. Other copies of the cover, however, I'm reaching for a different cover now. The font is very clearly different. This is another original cover, but here the song titles they're in a different font. They're not in that same typeset looking lettering, and it's a much bolder font. It shows up much stronger. There's more contrast between the color of the lettering and the black background. It's a lot easier to read. What that signifies, again, is kind of anyone's guess. As I said, stuff in the Ironworks catalog is a real mishmash sometimes. My guess, and this is only a guess, I would guess that maybe they did the typewriter font copies first, and when they realized it didn't look particularly good, they did all subsequent batches with the bold lettering. That's a guess that would make sense if things were done logically. Things aren't always done logically, so I don't put a whole lot of water into that. That's just a guess on my part. So anyway, going back, that's getting a little turned around here. You'll understand why by the end of this video. But yeah, this is kind of the standard thing you're going to find. If you go on eBay or Discogs and you buy an old copy, you're going to get this cover. You're going to get, it'll either have the bold font or the typewriter font. And it's probably going to have a silver label with black lettering on it. You might get one that has red lettering instead. And it should still, hopefully it has that original insert with it. So that's kind of the standard version of ample destruction. Now, Ironworks, being Ironworks, they did also put out a picture disc version that looks very different. Here is the original picture disc that was put out with the release of the album. It's in kind of a weird square die cut thing. I'll slide it out of there for a second so you can get a better look at it. It's a pretty nice looking picture disc with a big tank image rolling across it, which I think is kind of appropriate because the music has that really grinding, pounding sound to it, like you're getting run down by a tank. Band picture on the back. We saw that picture a little earlier on one of the other pressings. So yeah, this is a original from Ironworks. And when I say original, I mean that, yes, the matrix numbers in the runoff grooves are the same. It's identical to the black vinyl copy I showed you just a minute ago. And the matrix numbers begin with like IW like 1001-A for side A and IW 1001-B for side B. The numbers are going to become important. Spoiler alert. I told you we were going deep today. So, cool picture disc. Harder to find than the regular versions, of course. The regular versions on black vinyl, those still show up pretty regularly. This is not an album that was limited to 1,000 copies or 500 copies or anything. If you want that original black vinyl version of Ample Destruction, yeah, they list them on eBay usually once every couple of weeks at least. You'll see a copy of it. So no, not a hard thing to find. Picture disc doesn't show up as much. Now, Ironworks being Ironworks, they weren't done. They also made more copies. Cover is the same, another original cover. This one's got the bold font print on it. And same insert. Noticing changes there that I'm aware of. But they did make some copies. Now here's that label I was talking about before. Here's a copy that has the silver label but with red font on it. So The red font, I think, is a little more striking, looks a little nicer. This copy doesn't just have a different label. This copy is on clear vinyl. So some copies were pressed up on different colored wax. Clear vinyl version is pretty difficult to come by. This copy, I know it's an original. Again, the matrix numbers match up. It has those same IW matrix numbers on each side. And just for further confirmation, which is important, and you'll see why, this came out of the collection of Jim Cranford. He's one of the really famous heavy metal collectors. He sold his collection off back in the mid-2000s. And this was one of the few items I was lucky enough to win. And I'll be real honest, I think about the only reason I was able to win this is this came up for auction right around the time the recession was starting to loom in, and a lot of people were already starting to feel the pinch. And I still had just a little bit of disposable income. And as such, I got this. I think if he had auctioned this off, like a year earlier, it probably would have sold a little higher, and I would not have been in the running for it. So, yay, recession? That doesn't sound right. No, we don't cheer for recessions. But, bottom line, I think I got a bit lucky that I was able to purchase this. Really cool collectible from the band. But Ironworks, that's not quite enough versions to put out. So they did another one. This one, same front cover. That cover here has the bold print on it instead of the typewriter print. Comes with the same insert that we've seen a couple of times now. Lyrics and pictures, all that. This version has, again, silver label with red lettering on it. Now, at first, to slide this out, it's like, okay, this just looks like one of the black vinyl versions that has the red lettering, which, yeah, some of those are around. This is not black vinyl. This copy is actually on sort of a very dark, translucent red vinyl. And to try to show this off, just looking at it under normal light, it does look black. No shame in missing that, especially on camera. Even holding it here, in my hand, it looks pretty black. But if you put a strong light behind it, let's see if we can get this to show up well here or not. Yeah, there. Here's the flashlight. See, you thought the flashlight was just a funny prop for the intro. No, I need this to show you what the heck is going on here. So let's hold this up close to the camera. Now I'm going to hold the flashlight really close to the vinyl on the back side, and you can see through it, and it's red. So this is actually a very dark red translucent copy. I'm guessing these were mixed in. There are a few copies that have turned up over the years that are a brighter red vinyl. And I'm guessing this must have been at the end of the run when they were starting to mix in a lot of maybe the black vinyl, so that it made sort of a funny mixture color. But yeah, you can see as I move the flashlight around there, it's actually red and not black. And just to show that there is a difference, let's put that one down for a second. And let me go back to one of the copies that was really on black vinyl. Here we go. This is the first one I showed you. So with this one, where'd that flashlight go? This one, same thing. Taking the flashlight, holding it very close, and you can't see the flashlight. I mean, I've got the flashlight almost pressed right up against the vinyl itself. And yeah, no light's going to show through. Of course, it shouldn't. So yeah, Ironworks pressed up. Some copies on red vinyl, some of which show up, as a very sort of bright red vinyl, like the lettering on the labels. And some of the copies, I've only ever come across a couple that are that very dark red vinyl that you don't, again, it's a pretty easy thing to overlook. Unless you know what you're looking for with them. Now, those are, and again, those red vinyl copies, they have the same matrix number. They've got the IW-1001 A and B. matrix numbers for it. Just to make sure I'm quoting those off right, let me read them off here because I don't want to give anybody the wrong information. Yeah, the matrix numbers on those, it's IW1001-A, KDISC, KP, yes, he still is, L-17904. And then on the flip side, it's IW100-B, I think it's supposed to be 1001-B, sorry, KDISC, KP, D period, T period, did it, L-17904-X. I warned you we were going deep in the rabbit hole today. Yeah, so those are the versions I have come across that have these original matrix numbers on them. So you could get it on black vinyl, you could get it on clear vinyl, you could get it on red vinyl, you could get it on picture disc, and the labels can have black print or red print, and the cover can have the typewriter font or the bold font. So yeah, there's a lot of variations there. The red vinyl copies are the hardest ones to find. The clear vinyl copies are also very, very hard to find. A lot of people, I think, underestimate how hard it is to get the clear vinyl copy because folks tend to obsess over the red vinyl copy, it being the rarest one. But yeah, even the picture disc is a pretty nice one that you don't see very often. We're not done yet. No, I've got a few more to show, not to the bottom of the stack. There's several other versions of this record that do turn up. So next up, we have, let's go with this one. So copies of this have turned up for sale over time, listed as a test pressing of the album. And there are some notable differences here. And these have caused a lot of confusion, and there's a lot of speculation about what the heck they are and where they came from. A lot of people have insinuated that, someone that used to be connected with Ironworks, still had access to, old recordings and even some old, stock leftover covers of albums and stuff like that, and put out these versions much later, in the 1990s and early 2000s, putting them specifically directly onto the collector market. Some things to note with the test pressing here. The label, of course, is different. It doesn't have that kind of crest under the title. It's just the name JAG Panzer. It doesn't have the album title there. It literally says advanced test pressing right there to the side of the center hole, which, again, a little unusual. A lot of times with test pressings, you don't have much information at all on them. You just have like either a plain white label or the exact same label you're planning to put on the record. So it's odd that it has a distinct label made for it. The track list is different. This has 4 songs on side A, and it's also got 4 songs on the flip side. It leaves off the song The Watching. Again, fans of the album know it's got 9 songs, not just 8. So there's a complete difference in the track list, and that's reflected in the fact that it has different matrix numbers on it. When you read the matrix numbers in the runoff grooves here, this one is different. The matrix numbers here are JP 485001-2, and then in quotation marks, Ironworks. And the other side, it's JP 485001-A, and then in quotation marks, Ironworks. Didn't know the rabbit hole was going to get this deep today, did you? Neither did I when I fell in love with the album and thought, oh yeah, why don't I get a couple more versions of it? It'll be fun. I need help. So yeah, touted as test pressings, but there's a lot of differences going on here. The story was that, they made some changes at the last minute. They decided to cram that one extra song on, which meant they had to go back and literally do a new pressing plate for it, and such. I have never seen or heard anything directly from the band about that kind of thing going on. So whether that story is legit and these were a thing, maybe. Again, I don't think people really saw these come out on the collector's market until long after the album had been released. Again, I'm talking like, 1990s and 2000s, which again, seems like copies would have been floating around much earlier than that if these had legitimately been made back in 1984. This isn't the only oddball that shows up with those JP matrix numbers, though. We're not done yet. All right. There's also copies showed up in the early and mid 2000s on clear vinyl. And these are a little different, but also kind of the same. Obviously, first off here, these were sold again, advertised as test pressings. You don't usually see people do clear vinyl test pressings. Again, the test pressing is something that, from a label standpoint, you're just trying to quickly get some copies out there for some, advertising before the thing goes into production. Why would you bother pressing them up on a different color of vinyl? Seems like it's going to take more effort, not less. But again, just these came with the little insert here. It literally says here, here's our new JAG LP coming out in about a month. Let me know what you think. And I'm pretty sure the signature there at the bottom is Dave Richards, who again was one of the people intimately connected with the label. This copy, unlike the one I showed you a minute ago, this has a title on it, License to Kill. And that has long been reported to have been the original title of the album, and that it was maybe a last-minute audible to change the album's title to Ample Destruction from License to Kill. License to Kill would have been a good title too. I do think Ample Destruction is a little more unique, so I think I like that one better. This one, again, 4 tracks per side. The watching is not included on this. And when you check, it still has that advanced test press on the side, but again, it says License to Kill up here. So it's not the exact same label as the black vinyl copy I showed a second ago. That one just says JAG Panzer up there. It doesn't say License to Kill on that side. This one, I'm just double checking the labels. Okay, now actually, the label on the flip side does just say JAG Panzer. So a little thing even I had missed there. But yeah, so the labels are different on one side versus the other. One side has a title listed, License to Kill, and one side doesn't. So again, kind of weird. And the matrix numbers on this are those same JP matrix numbers. And again, this is something that nobody really saw on the collector market until maybe the very late 90s or more like mid 2000s. When I started seeing these pop up a couple of times, it was more around, let me think, 2008, 2009, somewhere in that time frame. So another weird version with a different matrix number and obviously sort of a different makeup to it. Still going, you also have this thing. This is another picture disc, but it's a one-sided picture disc. Let's check it out so you can get a good look at it here. It looks really nice. It has the Skyriders art in it, but it doesn't take up the full disc like that bootleg picture disc I showed you to start with. There's some white space above and below it here. And again, it's listed as advanced test pressing. But a little dubious about that. It's one-sided now. There's no grooves pressed on this side at all. This is completely flat. You couldn't put a needle on it. There's nothing to play. So it only has one side. The label, it's got that License to Kill label. It has the advanced test press notice on it. And again, the matrix numbers are that JP matrix numbers, not the IW matrix number series. This one I got from a collector in Florida when she sold off her collection 10 years or so ago. And she said she had gotten it directly from someone that, again, used to work at Ironworks. So this seems to be yet another weird in-house variant. But by her recollection, she got this more like in like the mid to late 90s. Or maybe the very earliest 2000s. So all of these versions that have the JP matrix number on them. They all, what they tend to have in common is they have, a label that says, copyright advanced copy test press to them. And they all have 8 songs on them. They all leave the watching off. They also seem to be things that didn't turn up in collectors' hands until literally, 1 or 2 decades after Ample Destruction was originally released. So at some point, somebody manufactured another set of printing plates and produced stuff using those plates, but they're different from the printing plates that were used to press up the album when it was commercially released back in 1984. All right, if you've been keeping count, that's 10 different versions of Ample Destruction I've shown you. Why do I own 10 copies of Ample Destruction? As I said at the beginning of the video, I think it's one of my absolute favorite metal albums. I'll put just about anything ever made up against it. Another reason I have so many copies is that I have a very, very understanding wife who will put up with a lot of stuff. But we have gotten to the end of the stack. I have no other versions to show you. That doesn't mean there aren't other versions out there. Again, there have been a couple of copies on bright red vinyl with those original IW matrix numbers on them. There have been reports of test pressings that do have the original IW matrix number on them. I've seen one of those auctioned, but I've never been able to hold it in my hand, check it out myself. As you can see with these, you really have to be pretty careful and examine them closely to know what exactly it is you're getting. And a big thing too is to make sure you're comfortable with the price. Some of these odd variations people will ask a lot of money for sometimes. And some of them are indeed rare and very hard to get. And some of them may not really be a vintage item from the 1980s. So, buyer does have to be pretty cautious with these. And again, you can avoid the whole mess by just picking up one of the really cool reissues that have been done in the past few years. I'm out of copies. 10 is all I have to show you. So let's wrap this up and then let's talk metal in the comments down below. What do you think of Ample Destruction? Do you like the album as much as I do? Or maybe it's not one of your favorites. Maybe you haven't checked it out before. Do you know of any other versions? I'm obviously just a wee bit obsessive with this album, so if people have other variants, I would love to know about it. Again, I'm not tracking all the more recent reissues. I have nothing against them. It's a great way for people to get the album if they want it. But, it's these oddball things from the 80s and possibly the 90s or early 2000s that I'm trying to see how many different versions are out there. I think 10's enough for me personally, but it's still always cool to hear if other folks have different versions. I wouldn't be at all surprised, given the history of Ironworks and how many different things they produced for different records, if there's something else out there that, even though I've been looking at these for decades, just has never come across my particular eyeballs. So let me know in the comments down below if you've got other cool items associated with Ample Destruction. And with that, let's call this to a close. I've got a lot of records to put back on the shelf tonight. Until next time, everybody, keep banging your head.